Hello, everyone. This is Hong Yao Wu, Isaac again. So, welcome to my new video today. And today, this video view will be talking about telephone interpreting, which is a different type of interpreting from what we were talking about on the previous video, which are known as on-site interpreting. Today, I will be focused on talking about the details of telephone interpreting service provided by community interpreters. So we will be talking about what it is and how does it work, and a little bit of a detail of how we really do it in every day. And I hope that this will help you as a future or prospective interpreter or future or prospective client of telephone interpreting to be, prepare yourself and understand how it works. Of course, this is from my perspective, and all of you are more than welcome to add to it. So, first of all, we mentioned before, interpreting is a process in which an interpreter understands the message of someone from language A, the source language, understood it, transfer it to the target language, which is such as language B, and usher it verbally into language B, so that the communication gap between two or more parties who had language barriers could be bridged, such as someone who doesn't speak English, someone who doesn't speak a Chinese language, that they couldn't talk to each other properly, they could not understand each other, so interpreter try to bridge this communication gap between the two of them. And sometimes, and in fact, throughout this pandemic since March this year, face-to-face interpreting has become less and less available due to social distancing and safety concern. So a lot of places who usually require on-site interpreters, such as the courts, the hospitals, and even the police stations, now they began to adopt a new way of doing things. They try to engage an interpreter via telephone. So recently, I have done a telephone interpreting for a lawyer's office. So this lawyer, who usually will ask an interpreter and a client to come to the office, sit together in the same room, a private room, and to talk about what are they going to do for the court case, what are they going to do for the charges. They've actually had to do it through telephone, because if the three of us sit in the same room, it might bridge, or in fact, it will bridge the social distancing requirement by the government. So nowadays, what they do is they will actually pre-schedule a time where a person, usually the English-speaking client, will have a system, either a system of two phone lines connected into the user, or as for my client, what we will do is I will be picking up the phone on me, and then the client will put another phone on loudspeaker, and when the time is up, the client will call me, and she will call my client. So the other Chinese client will try to speak through the loudspeaker on the other telephone, and I will be speaking through loudspeaker from this particular phone. So that this is how it works in a private session. And in agency part of perspective is they actually had a system where they can combine two lines together, where instead of talking through a loudspeaker, that we can actually talk as if there's a three-way telephone conference where we could understand and hear each other perfectly. And how it goes is whenever someone picks up the phone, dials the interpreter service, and it will connect the interpreting service to the two clients, the English-speaking clients and the non-English-speaking clients. And what would they do is they will be merged into the same line, and we can hear each other pretty okay, as if we are in the same room. So if everything just go as usual, the two parties speak to each other in their own language. I, as the interpreter, I will listen to what they say and interpret whatever I hear. Of course, this will be done remotely. I will be, on my phone. Usually, I will plug my headphone in to avoid any outside distractions, so I can then, interpret for my client over the phone. So I've just explained what it is, right? As you can see, this is an format of interpreting do via phone or sometimes video conferencing. So how it does is usually through a mobile device, a landline, or sometimes through a laptop, a PC, where the parties are connected via the internet. And we can actually do interpreting without seeing each other face to face. So now let's talk about how it usually goes. I start by giving you a live example. Back to the court office again. The lawyer usually calls me in. Okay, they will first confirm who am I. They will say that hello, my name is Joe Smith. I am the duty lawyer at, for example, Melbourne Magistrate Court or whatever regional court, Werribee Magistrate Court, and I'm after an interpreter. And you, as the interpreter, you have to confirm yourself, saying that, okay, my name is Hong Yao Wu. I am the Mandarin interpreter. Always remember, since you don't see each other and there's no paperwork in front of you, you need to be very specific over the phone. You have to let them know who you are and what language can you interpret. If you can interpret for more than one language, you can say, I am the Mandarin and Cantonese or Vietnamese interpreter. And your client will know which one to pick. As long as you let them know first, you are actually able to interpret the language they require. Then next, once we confirm each other, the client will introduce themselves, and then you will introduce the non-English speaker to yourself. And when this happens, the client will usually ask you to speak to the non-English speaker for a while. They will say something like, can you please make sure you understood each other? So you will use your language, such as Mandarin, to say 你好, 你好 to the other client. And if the person reply correctly with a reply of your own language, for example, Mandarin, they say 你好, 你好, then you know these clients actually speak the same language as you do, so you can continue. Believe it or not, there were quite a few cases where a police officer calls the system and connect to me via telephone, and then the other client who attained the police station spoke in a language that I do not understand at all. I don't know what that is. I couldn't even tell what language it is. The police officer asked me very politely, saying that, could you actually tell what language is this lady speaking? And then I don't even know. So this is where the communication will break down again. The police officer will then, without knowing what language this person actually speaks, will have to try again, calling the agent again. We'll ask the agency, said, I don't know what language it is. Let's try Vietnamese. Let's try Burmese. Let's try whatever. So it's more trial and error. So this is one of the, shortcomings of telephone interpreting on a ad hoc base in places such as the police station. However, in Australia, luckily, most people who uses public service, they will actually understand a very minimal level of English. They can at least tell the police officer or the centerling officer what language they are after, so that the relevant staff will direct them to the relevant interpreters over the phone. And then, look, now comes to the interpreting part. So there are a few differences or a few scenarios that we might not happen in a on-site interpreting scenario, but it happens a lot in telephone interpreting. One of the issues that I always want to talk about is clarity. When you speak to someone face to face, the chances of you not able to hear the person sitting next to you clearly is almost none, unless you had a problem yourself. However, over the phone, especially when your client is speaking over the loudspeaker, you may experience this problem of clarity. You might not be able to hear what your clients say clearly. When they're over the loudspeaker, there are echoes, and maybe they're too far away from the phones, and you couldn't hear them properly. And when you cannot hear the whole content, you cannot hear what they say clearly, then you have trouble understanding what the message is, and you cannot interpret properly. So at this kind of situation, you as an interpreter, you have to very honestly tell the person who speaks English that, sorry, I can't hear your client. Can you please get closer to the phone, or can you please get rid of the background noise or go to somewhere quieter? Sometimes, in the cases of utility companies, a lot of background noise. Their colleagues of this call center, they were all talking in different languages over the background, sometimes in English, sometimes you can hear some Hindi. So you have to be very upfront and straight to the operator or the customer service person. Tell her or tell him that, look, I can't hear you because you have really, really loud background noise. So somehow, I think they do have a button or a function somewhere in the system where they can mute the background noise and where you can hear your client properly. But there are some company, I don't want to name what company it is. Sometimes it just can't help. It's just constant background noise. You can hardly hear what your clients say. And sometimes, besides clarities and able to hear what they said, there is another problem. All of us, we all had a limited capacity to remember what people say and utter it at the same time. There are many, many cases. I see it almost on a daily basis where the clients who calls the service provider, this is of course a Mandarin speaker, and she will say that, hello, my name is such and such. I'm calling in regarding to my water service. And she will be saying, instead of stopping or pausing, they will say that, oh, okay, I moved in 2 weeks ago and everything was fine. And then up until last night, the water stops coming, and then I have trouble flushing my toilet, I have trouble showering, I have trouble watering my garden, and then my kids are not able to shower themselves, and we are in a lot of difficult troubles, and now I can't even cook. So how can I fix it? And can you please get me to the right department? Yada, 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 yada. It can go up to like a minute or two. And sometimes they won't talk about what happened to them in the sequence base. They talk about here and there. Sometimes they get the dates mixed up. Oh, I moved in yesterday, and then they talk for a while. Oh, no, by the way, it was a few days ago when this problem happened. So you don't know what happened, okay? At this time, as an interpreter, you need to intervene. You have to first politely stop this person, say, hey, excuse me, can you please just slow down? I am the interpreter, please slow down. And then use English to talk to the customer service person, telling him or her that, well, unfortunately, she went on for too long and was a little bit illogical. Am I able to clarify what she wants? And at this moment, the customer service person usually will very kindly tell you that, okay, look, I don't need all that. All I need is whatever information is, usually an account number or a customer ID. So you might also, the other person might just keep on talking about what happened to himself or herself, without answering the question. And you as an interpreter, you don't have to get upset. You don't have to cut them off. If you can't hear them, you can't remember them, you are more than welcome to ask them to repeat what they say again. And it is up to the customer service person to stop them, which you will interpret what this person says that, excuse me, ma'am, before you get into all the details, can you please tell me your customer ID or account number? And through this, okay, do not interfere into this trouble. Whenever there's a breakdown of communication, of course, not language related, but the way of thinking, you don't have to intervene. All you need to do is interpret what you could remember and let the customer service or your client to sort out what to do next. This is very common. I see it almost every day, is where a customer service staff will always want to get your ID and confirm your identity. This is always what they're after. Your customer, can I have your account number or customer ID? Can I confirm your identity? What's your name? What's your date of birth? What's your address? Okay, without all this basic personal information or security information, they cannot proceed, because by law, this is called the privacy law of Australia, they cannot continue without first confirming the identity of the client. Whereas your client who speaks Chinese or other languages, they are more into their problem. They want to tell you as much detail as possible about what happened to them. And they forget about identifying themselves. They may forget about, talking about what happened to them in a sequence or a logical manner. They will basically just shoot you with a lot of information constantly, try to tell you everything they could think of before they forgot themselves. Okay, so you as an interpreter, you are in a very difficult situation. You are stuck in the middle, where you have trouble understanding all this gazillions loads of information, and at the same time, the customer service person is trying to stop you interpreting and ask. They are trying to go through the procedure by first identifying the person that they are speaking to. So this is the first challenge, or I would say almost a daily challenge to the interpreter over the phone. And without visual cues, where your customer can see the service person actually looking into the piece of paper and jot down, write down, taking the names and date of birth and address. Without this visual cue, your non-English speaking client may just go on and on and on and on. And that happens so many times. And this is something that is a problem, this communication chaos. And I talked about this a lot. I say this at the beginning of this video because I want all of you to remember this will happen most of your days. So almost every day for me. Okay, and then just in case, okay, now we talk about next item, which is just say you are lucky. You're able to calm the customer down, and you're able to identify yourself as an interpreter. You're able to identify the two parties. And then next, the problem is, of course, this has nothing to do with either the clients or the customer service, is coming from you. Some of my common issue is I live in this mountainous region, or should I say a mountainous suburb, where the signals sometimes could be pretty unstable. Sometimes I looked at my phone, it's 5 bars all full, and all of a sudden it dropped to only 1 bar. So when you are having a poor signal on your cell phone, then you have trouble hearing what they say. And no matter it is the English-speaking client or the non-English-speaking client, it is quite annoying for either of them to repeat over and over again. Sometimes they might say that, why don't you listen to me? Sometimes they might say that, did you actually understand what I said? But to be honest, you couldn't hear it because of technical issues. And sometimes this may happen to my clients as well. Sometimes I've just interpreted a very lengthy chunk of information from the non-English speaking client, the Chinese client. And then after that, the customer service person would just say, "Oh, excuse me, sorry, interpreter, can you interpret what you say?" I'm like, "Excuse me, I just did." And she said, "Oh, sorry, you were cutting off. The line wasn't clear. You weren't very clear." So at this moment, you as an interpreter, you can, if it is really short, such as name or date of birth, you may choose to repeat yourself. Of course, this is not ideal. You should always, convert what you heard to, convey it to your non-English speaking client, the Chinese client, to ask them to repeat. But here, it increases the tension. Whenever, due to the telephone line issues or signal issues, either party couldn't hear what you just interpreted. And if you follow exactly the procedure and just say that, "Oh, excuse me, I couldn't hear what you say," and then this client will have to repeat over and over again, sometimes it may lead to tension. They might say that, "Excuse me, I am fed up. Why don't you listen to me?" Of course, we are listening to them, but the signal issue is something that, there's nothing we can do about it. And having said that, sometimes your client will tell you a piece of information. However, the customer service person may say, "Unfortunately, I'm not able to help you with this." For example, if in a banking situation where someone calls the bank and she is dealing with a house loan issue, but she calls personal loan line. Okay, so this customer service person from the personal loan team, they will say, "Oh, unfortunately, I'll have to transfer you to our, house loan department." And then once this transfer, the customer service person will ask, "May I have your details? How may I help you?" And then your non-English speaking client may assume that, "I've just told you, interpreter. Why don't you just tell them?" However, always remember, this is not your job to remember what they say and repeat, on their behalf. You will always, have to reply politely that, "Oh, look, I'm just an interpreter. It is your responsibility to tell them what you want. So I will interpret for you." Okay, so always remember, this is very common and it happens to me almost weekly, if not daily. So now talking about, we talked about these communication confusions, signals, and I'm not sure whether I mentioned it back. Yeah, I think I mentioned about background noise as well. Background noise could also from you. Recently, there is a construction right behind this wall. All right, so this construction, they are trying to repair the walls out here, and then you were interpreting. I was interpreting in a perfectly quiet situation like this. You couldn't hear any background noise right now, and you can all of a sudden there's a noise, and as they are trying to use the machine to fix whatever problems out there, and then the background noise not only stops you from hearing clearly what happened, but it also cause trouble for other person as well. The customer service person may just ask a question such as, "What was the problem?" And then you heard the reply and was trying to interpret what the reply was, but the sound, you know, you know, drown you, you know, then unfortunately you would just have to repeat. Or before that, if this noise is consistent, you might have to go to a quiet place. So as you can see, I am in my little room here. Here's where I usually do my telephone interpreting service as well. So I wouldn't be going outside. I wouldn't be sitting right next to a busy street or interpret in a cafe. I will always try to stay in somewhere that is nice and quiet. However, if that is the opposite case, if your client, who may be a customer service person, and there's a lot of people talking over him over in the background, then you have to tell them that you are having a lot of background noise. And no, believe me, they will somehow figure it out and then get rid of the background noise. I think they do have some sort of technology that help out with that. Of course, the most difficult part is the non-English speaker, where maybe this person is really calling at an emergency situation where there's a lot of background noise, and you know, and there's nothing much you can do. They will try to speak louder into the phone, the cell phone, but you can always ask them to repeat. And I think that's basically that's the only thing you can do. Before clarity, background noise, and of course, there are three situations where that it is the most annoying things when you do telephone interpreting. First of all, is drop off. You are doing your telephone interpreting, everything goes smoothly, no background noise. They are your clients are very cooperative, and they are doing consecutively. You said A, I say B, allow the interpreter to interpret everything very happily. But you don't control your phone. You don't control the signal towers. And sometimes it just got dropped off. So when you interpret, it is preferred that you go to somewhere. When you pick up the phone, you should look at your phone occasionally and look at the signal bar. You will always be at a disadvantage situation where the signal around you is really low. This may happen in some places, such as the RNE hospital, where I don't really get that. At the time when I was interpreting at the RNE hospital, it was actually in a area that is under the ground, and instead of having a landline, believe it or not, this nurse actually gave me a cell phone, and I was interpreting through the cell phone, and or maybe I was over the cell phone, but that nurse is in the hospital, in the underground level, speaking through a cell phone with the client. And unfortunately, with a underground structure, the signal of your mobile phone could be really horrible. So signal, they make all the dialogue become very broken, and sometimes you couldn't hear what they say. So without understanding the full picture, and sometimes the keywords went missing. So then it is the time where you can't really understand the whole concept. You don't understand the message. So there's no way you can interpret it. So this is something that is out of control. There's nothing we can do about it. And as an interpreter, there's one thing you can control, but it often happens to me. As if you use an iPhone, you might notice that as time goes by, the capacity of your battery actually deteriorate. So sometimes at the moment you just look at your phone, it was like 40%, and then all of a sudden, without you noticing it, it become 20%, and all of a sudden from 20%, it just power off by itself. So when these things happen, of course, you have to plug it back in and wait until your phone to restart. However, depends on different agents. If this interpreter's agency utilizes a automated computer system, the system might try to get back to you when you had a drop off. However, if your phone was still switched off, then the system cannot get back to you. So after once or twice, after 2 failed attempts, the company's automatic system, they would just go to a new interpreter. So you lost your job right there. And then sometimes your agency might write an email to you saying that you were on the middle of an interpreting assignment and you all of a sudden hung up. That's what they would say, because the system won't tell them whether it was a power off, a dropped off, or hung up. But it's whenever the communication broke down, they will assume that you hung up. And this is not allowed by the protocol set up by your agent. So then you have to explain yourself. It was just my phone got power off. And they usually will be quite understandable, and they will let you go. But so as an interpreter, you should always get all your gadgets ready. Okay, so get an up-to-date phone. Make sure your battery health is good. If necessary, you can always plug in your phone and put on your headphone into it, put on your earphone, and then try to do the interpreting. So this is how you can avoid dropping off due to battery outage. Um, Now there are other things that you have to be very be a careful of is don't take things personally. I think this is not something to do with your skill, not something to do with your technology, but it's more to do with your emotion. Okay? Interpreters, we are not robots. We are human beings. Sometimes, in cases of, for example, your client was overcharged by a lot. Okay? Their quarterly electricity bill was $500, but there's only one person living in a two-bedroom small apartment. One person lives there, and every month, this month, he got a $500 bill. And understandably, this client will get really upset. He will talk in a loud voice, speaking really fast, using nasty languages. And when you hear it, it's not a pleasant experience. So you, as an interpreter, your job is not to filter what he or she say. In fact, you should interpret exactly what the gentleman said about what the gentleman was saying and interpret his frustration to the customer service stuff. If he uses the F word, if he uses coarse language, if he or she is, even cursing you or the family, or there are many cases where, why don't you help me? I'm you and I, we're all Chinese. Why are you, teaming up with these, foreigners and team up against me as a fellow Chinese person? They get personal, they get emotional, they get nasty, and this happened to me several times throughout my 5 years career as an interpreter. They go directly towards you and become abusive sometimes. And you, as an interpreter, you have to understand how to react to it. You need to know that this frustration, one, you are not someone who deserves to listen or suffer all this nastiness. You can always tell the other English speaker, no matter it is a customer service person, a government staff, or a doctor, interpret what this person said directly to the other party. Well, no matter it could be coarse language, F word, something against nasty about the families. You must put yourself in a neutral position. I know it's hard. Sometimes I get angry too, but you hear what he say and try to copy the tone, even the volume of your customer, and try to interpret all this coarse language into English and let the other client understand how frustrated the non-English speaker was. And then you actually pass on this task of maintaining smooth communication or to control this situation to the profession, to other professionals. So it's not you. You are a professional interpreter. Your job is to interpret and maintain communication. But dealing with coarse languages, dealing with threatening languages is not what your job is. You need to pass it on to the police officer, to the nurse, to the doctor, to the Centrelink's customer service staff, and leave it to them, and they will actually tell you or tell them, sir, madam, no, you don't do that. We should talk about the problem. We shouldn't get too personal. You shouldn't get infuriated. You just interpret what they say. If the client continues, then sometime the English client's customer service person, they might choose to hang up and end the call, and you're out of it. And if, just say, you feel really upset as an interpreter, it is always okay to tell the customer service person saying that I feel offended. I'm upset about what she or he said towards me. So unfortunately, I don't think I deserve this kind of treatment, and I think I'm unable to continue this service. So can you please engage a new interpreter? And usually they will understand. They will let you go. Yeah, that happened to me several times in my life. I was just interpreting for a lady, and she raised her volume. She talks in really nasty language, and she was accusing me of not helping Chinese, helping foreigner against Chinese. Uh, and then she referred me as a traitor. That happened. So I don't have to be upset about that. I just say that excuse me, this lady is being very offensive. She's using coarse language. I don't want to continue. I'm unable to continue. So please engage a new interpreter. Well, usually they can either engage a colleague of yours, or simply this person get upset as well. This person got offended as well, and then he or she will end the call. And always remember, you are entitled to have your emotion. You are entitled to protect yourself. You just have to let the professional person know and let them deal with this situation. And even if you want to exit this matter, you will have to inform both parties. Even to the very aggressive client, you have to tell him or tell her that, well, look, I'm the interpreter. I don't deserve how you just treat me. So I think if you don't stop, if you continue like this, I'll have to leave this conference. I'll have to terminate this call. And sometimes your client will calm down, and because they want to solve the problem as well. Imagine they got a $500 bill for the electricity usage for 1 month. That they want to solve the issue as well. They will just have to force themselves to calm down and talk to the problem. Talk about the problem, not making themselves a new problem. So, you have to be aware of all this little intrigue, little strategy that helps you to avoid any unnecessary vicarious harm or distress. Yeah, so this is something that doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen. And when it happens, you need to be ready. And lastly, this is what I call, I would say this is a really very, very rare case where people will come back to you as an interpreter. Maybe you interpret for someone, in the morning, and in the afternoon, your company calls you back and said, "Hey, did you interpret for this person this morning?" Or even a few days ago. And if you remember, you just say whatever you remember. But as you know, if you work as a community interpreter and you interpret sometimes dozens, if not, 2 dozens of call in a day, you wouldn't remember exactly what you say. So they might come back to you and say, "Oh, there is a discrepancy of understanding." I think there was one time where I interpreted for a hospital, and then the client actually wanted to have direct blood transfusion. But what he's maybe was a bit of misunderstanding, or it wasn't really clear. What I heard was, "I want to use hemoglobin." Okay, so she's been talking about hemoglobin over and over again. And then, according to what she said at the end, I say, "Oh, forget it. I just want to have direct blood transfusion." Unfortunately, at least from my memory, that's not what happened. So you are entitled to, stand steadfast to what you hear, and also you're entitled to say, "I don't remember." If it is many days later, you're entitled to say, "I don't remember." It's always okay. It's always better for you to say, "I don't remember," than lie, because lying will always get you into bigger trouble. Don't be don't be pushed into lying. Don't be pushed into what your client wants you to say. People will always blame all the fault to the interpreter, and you have to protect yourself, especially if it is something that is legal, related to a legal matter, medical matter, or any matter. Your job is to interpret. It is the non-English speakers person, what is their responsibility to make themselves clear and talk in a way that you could understand. And it is the professionals' client's responsibility to make the professional judgment. It is not your responsibility. All you need to do is, if you don't understand, always ask them to clarify. If you can't hear it properly, always ask them to repeat. If you have trouble understanding, you have trouble managing, always have to let them know. However, once you've done this, you're sure if you could understand, if you interpreted everything properly, you are not responsible for whatever they say. It's what they say. Whatever they said is their call. Your job is only to interpret. Even if it is something nasty, even if it is something that is highly complicated or controversial, you just have to interpret. And don't, be aware of the fact that people will blame the interpreter, but in a ideal scenario, or most of the case, you don't have to be responsible about what has been interpreted, because your job, to be honest, is to interpret what you heard. You are not responsible for, making what this person says sounds nicer or more professional. You're not responsible to guess exactly what this person means. You just have to interpret. So always remember that, and don't take things personally. Okay, I heard so many ideas, so many stories of vicarious trauma from interpreting. Sometime over the phone, they might talk about something very bloody, nasty. Someone might get killed. There might be family violence cases. A few nights ago, I interpreted for a lady. She got smashed by glasses and cups by her husband. You don't have to take this personally. It is what happened to them, not to you. You as an interpreter, you just interpret what you hear and forget about it later. If you can't forget it, if it's lingering in your mind and it's bothering you, you're having nightmare, it's fine. You can always seek help. You can always speak to a psychologist. So it should be fine. You can always speak to a consultant. You can always take a break from your job. Take a break from telephone interpreting. That's okay. There's no mandatory quota for any community interpreter to interpret for certain number of telephone interpreting within any period of time. You can always take a break. You can always just pinch in your number and then switch off from the system, and that's definitely fine. And whenever you think you're definitely ready, you can always get back to it. So yeah, actually this is all up to you, and we are the one who is responsible to take care of ourselves and to protect ourselves against all sorts of liabilities and vicarious trauma. So this could be for me, it wasn't a big issue, but I'd heard a lot of stories from my colleagues previously. So you have to always understand that your job, as I mentioned it over and over again, you are neutral. You're not part of anyone. You are not part of any stories. You just have to understand and interpret. And in telephone interpreting scenario, you just have to make sure you can hear them properly. If you have trouble hearing them, if you think they're speaking too fast, if you think they're talking in a circle, if you think that they are not being clear enough, you just have to pause them, stop them, and ask them to clarify. So, and yes, this I think is basically all you need to know about the basic about telephone interpreting. So if you have any more question, you're more than welcome to leave it on the comment. Or if you think there are some other experience that you've been through, you are more than welcome to leave it in a comment as well. And I may reply to you, or I may even make a video of it. So if you have any other question, or if you were once a client, a user of telephone interpreting, please, you're more than welcome to let me know your experience and ask question about it. And I hope this video will help you to have a good understanding of telephone interpreting and help you to use interpreters over the phone in the future more effectively. So again, we talk about that we use telephone interpreting because of this pandemic. So take care of yourself, stay safe, stay away from the community, keep your social distance. So I wish you all well. Thank you very much.